"Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours." The 7 words left the child's mouth in perfect innocence, and Isabella Martinez felt her entire world shatter like glass. From across the palace entrance hall, she watched the vampire king go absolutely still. Watched her daughter Lily point to his wrist where the silver crescent and thorns blazed against his pale skin. Watched 8 years of carefully constructed invisibility crumble in the space between one heartbeat and the next. "Run," her mind screamed. "Grab Lily and run before he turns around. Before he sees you. Before everything you sacrificed burns to ash." But her legs wouldn't move. She stood frozen behind a marble column, a maid in gray servant's clothes, clutching silver polish like a lifeline while her worst nightmare and deepest longing unfolded 30 feet away. Dominic's voice cut through the space, rough with something that might have been hope or might have been rage. "Where is your mother? Where is she right now?" And Lily, her beautiful, innocent daughter who didn't understand what she'd just done, smiled and pointed directly at Isabella. Their eyes met across the hall. Gray storm meeting dark earth. The mate bond that Isabella had spent 8 years suppressing roared to life, her mark burning beneath the braided bracelet she'd worn every single day to hide it. 8 years of service in his palace. 8 years of being close enough to hear his voice through walls but never letting him see her face. 8 years of raising his daughter alone while watching him become a ghost. All of it ending in this single, terrible, beautiful moment. This is the story of how everything changed. How secrets kept for love became weapons. How a child's honesty tore down walls that manipulation had built. How 2 people who'd been broken apart had to decide if they were brave enough to fight their way back together. She was just a maid who'd learned to be invisible, and he was the vampire king who'd forgotten how to feel, until a child's innocent words shattered 8 years of silence and revealed the one truth that would set their entire city on fire. Welcome to a story about marks that bind, secrets that destroy, and a love that refused to stay buried. Before we begin, I want you to think about this. Have you ever had to hide a part of yourself to protect someone you loved? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is going to challenge everything you think you know about sacrifice. The council chamber of the Pale District was silent except for the scratch of quills and the occasional cough from ancient throats. Dominic Thorne, vampire king of the Crescent City, sat at the head of the obsidian table and felt absolutely nothing. He should have been listening to Lord Varen's report on border disputes with the werewolf clans to the north. He should have cared about trade routes and blood supply chains and the politics of immortal beings who had forever to hold grudges. He didn't. His fingers moved unconsciously to his left wrist, tracing the mark that had appeared there 237 years ago when he'd ascended to the throne. Except that wasn't quite true. The mark, a silver crescent moon intertwined with thorns that seemed to shimmer beneath his pale skin, hadn't come with the crown. It had come with her. And she was dead. At least that's what he'd been telling himself for 8 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Not that he was counting. "Your Majesty?" Lord Varen's nasal voice cut through his thoughts. "Your opinion on the matter?" Dominic's dark eyes lifted, and the temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. He hadn't survived 3 centuries by showing weakness. "Handle it as you see fit, Varen. That's why you have your position." It wasn't an answer. It was a dismissal. The council members exchanged glances but no one dared challenge him. They'd learned years ago that their king had become something harder after his mate's disappearance, something that ruled with flawless efficiency and absolutely no warmth. The meeting adjourned. Dominic stood, his tall frame casting long shadows in the candlelight. Electric lights existed in Crescent City, but the old families preferred the traditional ways. He moved through the palace corridors alone, as always, his footsteps echoing on marble floors. Servants pressed themselves against walls as he passed, eyes downcast. He barely saw them. He didn't see the woman in the simple gray uniform who clutched her cleaning supplies tighter as he walked by, her heartbeat spiking in a way that would have meant something if he'd been paying attention. He didn't see the way her hand flew to the braided bracelet on her left wrist, covering it protectively. He didn't see Isabella at all. And that was exactly how she needed it to be. 3 floors below, in the servants' quarters nestled in the palace's east wing, Isabella Martinez pressed her back against the stone wall and waited for her hands to stop shaking. 8 years. 8 years of this, of being so close to him she could sometimes hear his voice through the floors, of cleaning rooms he just left and catching the faint scent of cedar and night air that was purely him. 8 years of dying a little every single day. Mama, you're making that face again. Isabella looked down at her daughter, Lily, who watched her with eyes too knowing for a 7-year-old. Eyes that were the exact shade of stormy gray as Dominic's. What face, little flower? Isabella forced a smile, kneeling down to adjust the simple blue dress Lily wore. The servants' children were allowed in the palace as long as they stayed quiet and invisible. Lily was mostly good at both. The sad face you make when you touch your bracelet. Lily's small fingers reached out, tracing the worn leather and beads that Isabella never, ever removed. The one that hides your pretty mark. Isabella's heart stopped. Lily, what have I told you about that? Never to mention it, Lily recited dutifully, but her curious expression didn't fade. But why, Mama? Marks are special. Sarah in the kitchen says marks mean magic, and magic is good. If only it were that simple. Isabella pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of soap and childhood innocence. Some magic is complicated, sweet girl. And some things are safer as secrets. She had been 17 when the mark appeared, a human girl living in the border villages where vampires and humans coexisted in careful tension. She'd been drawing water from the well when the royal caravan had stopped, when he'd stepped out and their eyes had met, and the world had simply rearranged itself. The mark had burned itself into both their wrists simultaneously, visible to anyone with eyes, unmistakable in its meaning. True mates. A human and the vampire king. It should have been a fairy tale. For 6 months, it was. Until the council had called her into a private room and explained very carefully, with smiles that didn't reach their eyes, exactly how much danger she posed to everything Dominic had built. You're thinking about him again. Lily's voice was gentle, and Isabella realized tears had started to slide down her face. I'm thinking about dinner, she lied, wiping her eyes quickly. And about getting you ready for bed soon. Tomorrow's a big day, remember? The spring alignment ceremony. The whole palace will be busy. Lily's face lit up. Children were easily distracted by the promise of spectacle. Will there be music? Will I get to see the ballroom? If you're very good and stay close to me, maybe from the servants' entrance. It was cruel, perhaps, to raise her daughter in the shadow of her father's house without him ever knowing she existed. But it was crueler still to think of what the council would do if they knew. A half-human child with a claim to the throne? They'd tried to eliminate Isabella when she was just an inconvenient mate. A child would be an abomination to them. So Isabella had disappeared 8 years ago, faking her death with the help of Marcus, a kind-hearted servant who'd since passed from old age. She'd given birth in a human village, raised Lily in secret, and then done the most foolish thing imaginable. She'd come back. Not as Dominic's lost mate. Not as anyone important. Just as Isabella Martinez, a widow with a child who needed work. The head housekeeper, who'd only been hired after Isabella's disappearance, hadn't recognized her. The palace was huge, staffed by hundreds. She'd kept her head down, aged herself with exhaustion and worry, and become invisible. Close enough to see him. Far enough to keep them all safe. It was a slow torture, but it was all she had. Mama, your mark is glowing a little. Through the bracelet. Lily's whisper snapped Isabella back to the present. She looked down. The faintest silver shimmer was pulsing beneath the worn leather. That happened sometimes when Dominic was close, when the bond tried to reach across the distance she'd forced between them. She covered it with her palm. "It's just the light, flower. Now come, let's get you washed up." As she led Lily toward their small shared room, Isabella didn't know that tomorrow, her carefully constructed invisibility would shatter. She didn't know that her daughter's curiosity and innocence would speak the words that would change everything. She didn't know that sometimes, love doesn't stay buried. Sometimes, it just waits. The spring alignment ceremony preparations began before dawn. The palace transformed into controlled chaos as servants rushed through corridors with floral arrangements, golden banners, and enough candelabras to illuminate the entire city. Isabella kept Lily close as they worked in the outer ballroom, polishing silver that would grace tables she'd never be invited to sit at. Lily was supposed to be helping. Instead, she was mesmerized by the grand staircase where early arriving nobles made their entrances in gowns that cost more than Isabella earned in a year. "Stay close," Isabella reminded her for the 5th time, but her attention was divided between her daughter and the growing knot of anxiety in her chest. The spring alignment was the largest social event of the season. Dominic would be everywhere today. Visible. Close. The mark on her wrist had been burning since she'd woken up. "Mama, I'm just going to peek at the flowers in the entrance hall," Lily pleaded, her gray eyes wide and persuasive. Isabella hesitated. The entrance hall was far from the main ceremony spaces. "Safe enough." "5 minutes, Lily. Stay where I can call you." She watched her daughter skip away, light and carefree in a way Isabella had forgotten how to be. Then she turned back to the silver, catching her own reflection in a polished tray. When had she started looking so tired? She was only 33, but the years of hiding had carved themselves into the corners of her eyes. She didn't know that Dominic had decided to walk through the entrance hall instead of taking his usual route. He needed a moment away from the simpering nobles and political maneuvering, just 60 seconds of silence before he had to play the role of the dignified, unattached king for another interminable evening. He didn't know that a curious 7-year-old had just discovered the marble fountain in the center of the hall, where water cascaded over carved moonflowers. Lily was trailing her fingers in the cool water when she sensed him. Children were more attuned to supernatural presence than adults. Something in their unguarded souls recognized power. She turned and saw him, tall and devastating in formal black, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp features that would have been cruel if not for the profound sadness she somehow recognized in his eyes. She didn't know about protocol. She didn't know about bowing or titles or the 100 rules that governed how one addressed a king. She only knew that he had the same faraway sadness her mama sometimes carried, and that there was something familiar about him she couldn't quite name. "Hello," she said simply. Dominic stopped. He rarely interacted with the servants' children, but something about this one caught his attention. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. But from where? "Hello," he replied, his voice softer than it had been in years. "Shouldn't you be with your parents?" "My papa died before I was born," Lily said matter-of-factly. "But Mama's here. She works in the palace. She cleans the silver and sometimes the guest rooms on the 3rd floor." "I see." He should have walked away. He had a ceremony to prepare for. But he found himself asking, "And what's your name?" "Lily Martinez." She tilted her head, studying him with unnerving intensity. "You're the king. You look sad. Are kings allowed to be sad?" The question hit him squarely in the chest. When was the last time someone had asked him anything real? "Everyone's allowed to be sad," he said quietly. "Even kings. Mama says sadness means you lost something important." Lily stepped closer, water dripping from her small fingers. "Did you lose something?" His throat tightened. Yes. A long time ago. Was it a person? Yes. Lily nodded sagely. Mama lost someone too. She doesn't say it, but I know. She touches her bracelet and looks like you look right now. Despite himself, Dominic was intrigued. There was something about this child, some pull he couldn't identify. What bracelet? The one that covers her mark. Lily said it innocently, not understanding the weight of the words. She never takes it off. She says the mark is a secret, but I saw it once when she was sleeping. It's really pretty, all silver and swirly. Dominic's entire body went still. Marks weren't common. True mate marks were even rarer. And there was only one mark that would need to be hidden in his palace. Only one mark that would match. No. It wasn't possible. What does the mark look like? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Lily didn't notice his tension. She held out her small wrist, tracing an invisible pattern on her skin. Like the moon with thorns around it. The same as she stopped, her eyes widening as they dropped to his left wrist where his formal jacket had pulled back slightly, revealing the edge of silver against pale skin. The same as yours, she whispered. The world tilted. 8 years of grief, of carefully constructed numbness, of forcing himself to function without the other half of his soul, it all shattered in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours, Lily said, her voice filling with excited realization. Does that mean something? Sarah in the kitchen says matching marks are magic. Dominic couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The bond mark on his wrist, dormant for 8 years, suddenly flared to brilliant life, burning silver bright enough to see even in the morning light streaming through the windows. It only did that in the presence of its mate. Which meant, "Where is your mother?" The words came out as a command, centuries of royal authority compressed into 4 syllables. Where is she right now? Lily, startled by his intensity, took a step back. In the ballroom. But sir, I don't. He was already moving, his supernatural speed barely checked by the need to not terrify the child. His mind was racing, warring between impossible hope and the kind of rage that could burn down cities. If Isabella was alive, if she'd been alive this entire time, within his own palace. Behind him, Lily stood alone by the fountain, suddenly uncertain if she'd done something terribly wrong or terribly right. And 3 floors away, polishing silver with hands that had just started trembling for no reason she could name, Isabella felt her mark ignite like a star-going supernova. He knew. After 8 years of hiding, of invisible safety, of careful distance. He knew. Isabella ran. It was instinct, pure and primal. The moment her mark blazed to life, the moment she felt the bond snap taut after years of forced dormancy, she knew. She abandoned the silver, ignored the confused looks from other servants, and moved through the palace corridors with one desperate thought, get Lily and disappear. She'd done it before. She could do it again. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she navigated the servant passages, the narrow hallways hidden behind tapestries and false panels that the nobility never saw. Her mind spun with fractured plans. The Eastern Gate. The human quarter. She had a little money saved, enough for Isabella. His voice stopped her mid-step. Not loud. Not angry. Just her name, spoken in a tone that carried 8 years of grief, and it hit her like a physical blow. She didn't turn around. I don't know who you're talking to, Your Majesty. My name is... Don't. The single word cracked through the air. Don't you dare lie to me. Not now. Not after. He couldn't finish. She heard his breathing, ragged and uncontrolled in a way the composed vampire king never allowed. She heard him take one step closer, then stop, as if afraid she'd vanish if he moved too quickly. "Turn around," he said. "Please." The please broke something in her. Slowly, every muscle screaming at her to flee, Isabella turned and saw him truly for the first time in 8 years. He looked the same. Vampires didn't age. But everything else was different. The warmth she remembered in those gray eyes had turned to ice. The easy smile he'd once given her so freely had been replaced by harsh lines around his mouth. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to be anything but a king. She'd done that to him. "It's not possible," Dominic whispered, and she heard the tremor beneath the words. "You were dead." "I searched. For months I searched, and they found," his jaw clenched. "They found your blood. Enough blood that no human could have survived." "I know." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. It had to be convincing. Convincing. He repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. "You faked your death. You let me believe," the rage surfaced then, turning his eyes to storm clouds. "Do you have any concept of what these 8 years have been?" "Yes," she shot back, her own defenses rising. "I do. Because I lived them too. Every single day in this palace, close enough to hear your voice through the walls, far enough to keep you safe." "Safe?" His laugh was bitter, broken. "Safe from what?" "From me? I'm your mate, Isabella. I would have. From them." The words ripped out of her. "From the council, from the noble families, from everyone who made it very clear that a human mate would destroy everything you'd built. They gave me a choice, Dominic. Disappear or watch your kingdom tear itself apart. That's not your choice to make. You weren't there." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You didn't hear Lord Varen explain in exquisite detail how civil war would erupt. How the old families would never accept a human queen. How the werewolf clans would see it as weakness and attack. How hundreds would die because you chose to love someone beneath you. You were never beneath me." His voice dropped to something dangerous and desperate. "You were everything. I was 17 and terrified, and I loved you enough to let you go." The confession hung between them, raw and painful. "Don't you understand? Staying would have been selfish. Leaving was the only way to protect you. You don't get to make that decision for me." Dominic closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up as if to grab her shoulders, then stopping just inches away, trembling in the air. "You don't get to decide what I need protection from." 8 years, Isabella. 8 years I've been half alive, ruling a kingdom with nothing left inside me because you were gone. She could feel the heat of him, smell the cedar and night air that was achingly familiar. The bond was singing between them, trying to bridge the gap, trying to pull them together. It would be so easy to lean in, to let herself. "No. And if I'd stayed, you'd have been fully dead," she said coldly, stepping back. "Because that's what they promised me. An accident. A hunting trip gone wrong." They were very creative in their threats, Dominic. Very specific. His face went white. "Who? Give me names. So you can what? Execute half your council? Start the very war I died to prevent?" She shook her head. "Nothing's changed. I'm still human. You're still king. The same people who wanted me gone are in that ballroom right now, preparing to celebrate your reign. And if they find out, I don't care what they think. Then you're a fool." The harshness in her voice made him flinch. "You have responsibilities. A kingdom. Treaties and alliances that depend on None of it means anything without you. The rawness in his confession almost shattered her resolve. Almost. It has to mean something, she whispered. Because I gave up everything so that it could. Silence crashed between them, heavy with all the words they'd never gotten to say, with all the years stolen from them. There's something else, Dominic said finally, his voice carefully controlled again, retreating behind the king's mask. The child. Lily. She has my eyes. Isabella's blood turned to ice. She's mine, isn't she? It wasn't really a question. I have a daughter and you kept her from me. This was the moment Isabella had feared for 8 years. The moment when hiding Lily would transform from protection to unforgivable betrayal. Answer me, Isabella. His voice could have frozen the sun. Is she mine? Before Isabella could respond, could find words that didn't exist for this impossible situation, a small voice cut through the tension. Mama? They both turned. Lily stood at the end of the corridor, her gray eyes wide and frightened, darting between the mother she knew and the imposing king who looked ready to shatter. Mama, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Isabella hadn't realized tears were streaming down her face. She wiped them quickly, forcing her voice to steady. Nothing, Flower. Go back to. She stays. Dominic's command was absolute. His eyes hadn't left Lily, drinking in every detail, the dark curls, the sharp features, the way she stood with unconscious grace. Everyone stays. We're not finished. Yes, we are. Isabella moved to Lily, placing herself between her daughter and Dominic. You want to be angry? Be angry. You want answers? Too bad. I did what I had to do, and I'd do it again. But you don't get to storm into our lives now, Anne. Our lives? The words came out strangled. She's my daughter. I have a child I've never held, never known, and you think you can just... Your Majesty? They all froze. A young servant stood at the corridor's entrance, looking nervous. Lord Varen sent me to find you. The ceremony begins in 20 minutes. The guests are asking for you. The real world, with all its demands and impossible politics, came crashing back. Dominic looked at the servant, then at Isabella and Lily, his expression a war between duty and desire. Tell Lord Varen I'll be there shortly. The servant bowed and disappeared. When Dominic turned back to Isabella, something had shifted in his eyes. Determination, hard as diamonds. This conversation isn't over. Not even close. You're going to tell me everything, why you left, who threatened you, and every single moment of my daughter's life I've missed. And if I refuse? Then I lock down the palace and we have this conversation in front of the entire court. His smile was sharp enough to cut. Your choice, Isabella. Talk to me privately, or let everyone know that the king's dead mate has been living as a servant for 8 years. I wonder how that will look. It was a threat. A calculated, kingly threat. And it worked. Tonight, Isabella said quietly, defeat in every syllable. After the ceremony, I'll answer your questions. Mama, I don't understand. Lily's small voice wavered. Is the king angry at us? Dominic's expression crumbled. He knelt slowly, bringing himself to Lily's eye level, and when he spoke, his voice held a gentleness Isabella remembered from another lifetime. No, little one. I'm not angry at you. I could never be angry at you. But you're angry at Mama. I'm confused. And hurt. But that's between your mother and me. He hesitated, then added softly, you did nothing wrong by telling me about the mark. Do you understand? Nothing wrong. Lily nodded uncertainly. Dominic stood, his eyes meeting Isabella's one more time. Tonight. Don't even think about running. I'll find you. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the corridor toward a ballroom full of people who didn't know his world had just been reborn and shattered all at once. Isabella sank against the wall, her legs finally giving out. Lily curled into her side. Mama, did I make a mistake? No, sweet girl. Isabella kissed her daughter's hair, breathing in her innocence. You just told the truth. That's never a mistake. Even when the truth might destroy everything. The spring alignment ceremony was in full swing when the storm hit. Not a metaphorical storm, an actual one. Spring in Crescent City was unpredictable, but the sudden lightning that cracked across the sky and the downpour that followed were unusual even by local standards. The ballroom's massive windows rattled with thunder as nobles clustered away from the glass, their festivities interrupted by nature's reminder that not everything could be controlled. Isabella had returned to the servants' wing, trying to calm her racing heart and Lily's endless questions. She'd just gotten her daughter settled with bread and cheese when one of the senior housekeepers burst in. Martinez. We need every hand. The storm's flooding the East Wing. Guest rooms are soaked and we've got nobles who need relocating now. Isabella's stomach dropped. The East Wing. She'd been avoiding the main palace area specifically to stay away from Dominic and the ceremony, and now... I'll help, she said, because refusing would draw attention she couldn't afford. Bring your girl. We need her too, carrying linens, running messages. Everyone works tonight. 30 minutes later, Isabella found herself in the chaos of displaced nobility, arms full of fresh bedding, directing Lily to fetch towels while trying to remain invisible. It was working until she turned a corner and nearly collided with Lord Varen. The elderly vampire's eyes narrowed. You look familiar. I have a common face, my lord. Isabella kept her gaze down, her heart pounding. He didn't sound convinced, but another noble was calling his name, demanding attention, and he swept away. Too close. This was all too close. Mama, they're saying some guests need to move to the safe wing. Lily appeared at her elbow, slightly breathless. Where's the safe wing? The safe wing was the reinforced section of the palace, built centuries ago to withstand sieges. It was also where Dominic's private quarters were located. During dangerous storms, it was protocol to move important guests there. Of course it was. I'll show you, said a voice behind them, and Isabella's entire body went rigid. Dominic stood in the corridor, having shed his formal jacket, his white shirt slightly disheveled from helping with storm preparations. His eyes locked onto Isabella's with an intensity that made breathing difficult. Your Majesty, that's not necessary, Isabella started. Lord Varen asked me to oversee guest relocations personally. His tone was formal, kingly, but his eyes told a different story. Your staff. You'll follow instructions. It wasn't a request. For the next hour, Isabella was trapped in Dominic's orbit. He didn't speak to her directly, but he positioned himself so she was always in his line of sight. When she tried to slip away to another task, he'd redirect her with a simple command. When Lily grew tired, he personally showed her to a cushioned bench in his private study, a room Isabella absolutely should not have been allowed to enter. She can rest here, Dominic said, his voice softening as Lily curled up on the velvet cushions. It's quiet. Safe. Thank you, Isabella whispered, hating how much it meant to see him gentle with their daughter. The storm raged outside. Inside the study, with the door closed against the chaos, the three of them formed an accidental tableau of what could have been a father, a mother, a sleeping child. Dominic moved to the window, his back to Isabella. She has your smile. She has your stubbornness. Does she know? He didn't turn around. About me? No. Isabella stayed near Lily, using her daughter as a shield. I told her father died before she was born. It was easier than explaining that he was alive, but we could never see him. Easier. He said the word like it tasted bitter. Nothing about this is easy, Isabella. I know. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain and Lily's soft breathing. I used to imagine this, Dominic said finally, his voice so low she almost didn't hear it. In the months after you disappeared, before I accepted you were gone, I'd imagine finding you. What I'd say. He stopped, his shoulders tense. None of those imaginings included discovering you'd been living in my own palace. That I'd walked past you, possibly dozens of times, and never knew. I was careful. You were good at hiding. He turned then, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. The question is why you came back at all. If you wanted to stay away, you had the entire world. Why return to the one place where discovery was inevitable? It was the question Isabella had asked herself 1,000 times. Because I'm weak, she admitted. Because even though I knew it was dangerous and selfish, I couldn't stay away. I needed to see you, even from a distance. I needed to know you were all right. All right? His laugh was hollow. Isabella, I've been a ghost for 8 years. Ruling, existing, but not living. You think that's all right? Better than dead, which is what they would have made you. Stop hiding behind that excuse. His control finally snapped. Stop pretending this was noble sacrifice when you're standing here admitting you came back because you couldn't stay away. If you truly believed I was safer without you, you'd have stayed gone. The accusation hit home because it was true. You're right, she whispered. I'm a coward. I couldn't stay and I couldn't leave. So I chose this half-life where I could see you but never touch you, where I could raise our daughter in the shadow of your kingdom but never let you know she existed. You want me to admit it was selfish? Fine. It was selfish. It was also the best I could do. Thunder cracked, loud enough to make them both flinch. Lily stirred but didn't wake. Dominic crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just inches from Isabella. This close, she could see the silver flecks in his eyes, could feel the bond humming between them like a living thing. I don't want your admissions of selfishness, he said roughly. I want the truth. All of it. Who threatened you? What exactly did they say? And how do I make them pay? Dominic, revenge won't. This isn't about revenge. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching, as if he didn't trust himself to make contact. This is about making sure no one ever threatens you again. You and Lily. Do you understand? I don't care what the council thinks. I don't care what tradition dictates. You're mine. She's mine. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it cracked something open in her chest that she'd kept locked for 8 years. You can't just claim us, she said, but her voice wavered. The same problems still exist. The council, the noble families, the politics. Have you considered that maybe I've changed? His voice was low, intense. That the man you left 8 years ago isn't the same man standing in front of you now? I don't care about politics anymore, Isabella. I stopped caring about approval the day I thought I lost you. Then what do you care about? His eyes held hers, storm gray and unflinching. Finding out what my daughter's favorite color is. Hearing her laugh. Teaching her about her heritage. And maybe, his voice dropped to barely a whisper. Maybe learning how to have a conversation with her mother that doesn't end in accusations and pain. It was the most honest thing he'd said since the corridor confrontation. Before Isabella could respond, Lily's sleepy voice interrupted. "Are you two done fighting? Because it's very loud and I'm trying to sleep." They both turned to find her sitting up, rubbing her eyes, looking annoyed in the way only children could manage. "We're not fighting," Dominic said automatically. "You are. You're just doing it in whisper yells." Lily yawned. "Mama does that when she's really upset but doesn't want me to know." Isabella felt her face heat. "Lily. It's okay, Mama. I know you're sad a lot." Lily looked at Dominic with startling directness. "Are you the reason Mama's sad?" The question gutted him. Isabella saw it in the way his expression crumbled, in the way he had to take a breath before answering. "Yes," he said simply. "I think I am." "That's not true," Isabella interjected. "Lily, it's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." Lily stood on the bench, putting her at closer to eye level with the adults. "You like each other. I can tell. And you have matching marks, which Sarah says means you're supposed to be together. So why aren't you?" Out of the mouths of babes. "Because sometimes adults make things harder than they need to be," Dominic said, his eyes never leaving Isabella's face. "But maybe we're learning to do better." Another crack of thunder. The storm showed no signs of stopping. A knock at the door broke the moment. "Your Majesty? Lord Varen says the guests are settled. The ceremony will resume once the storm passes." "Understood," Dominic called back. Then, to Isabella, "Stay here tonight. Both of you. It's not safe to navigate the palace in this weather, and these rooms are the most secure. We can't." "You can. You will." His tone left no room for argument. "There's a bedroom through that door. Lock it if you want. But you're not going back out into that storm, and we're not done talking." He was right, even if Isabella didn't want to admit it. The storm was dangerous, and Lily was exhausted. "Just for tonight," she agreed quietly. Dominic nodded, then did something unexpected. He approached Lily slowly, carefully, and held out his hand. "It was nice to properly meet you, Lily Martinez." Lily looked at his hand, then at her mother. Isabella nodded, her throat tight. Lily shook his hand solemnly. "Nice to meet you too, Your Majesty." "Dominic," he corrected gently. "You can call me Dominic." "Okay, Dominic." Lily smiled, and it was Isabella's smile on a face shaped like his, and the sight of it nearly broke them both. He released her hand and stepped back. "Sleep well. Both of you." Then he left them alone in his private study, surrounded by his things, breathing his air, trapped by a storm that felt oddly like fate deciding they'd run from each other long enough. Isabella pulled Lily close as they moved toward the bedroom. "Mama? I like him. Is that okay?" Isabella's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Yes, Flower. That's okay. More than okay." It was terrifying. Isabella couldn't sleep. Lily had drifted off within minutes, curled up in the most luxurious bed she'd ever touched, but Isabella sat by the window watching the storm and replaying every moment of the last impossible day. Through the door, she could hear Dominic moving in the study, pacing from the sound of it. Also unable to rest. The mark on her wrist pulsed steadily now, no longer hidden beneath the bracelet she'd finally removed. After 8 years of suppressing the bond, having it active again was overwhelming. She could feel him through it, his restlessness, his turmoil, the edge of hope he was trying desperately not to embrace. She should stay in this room. Keep the door closed. Wait for morning when the storm would pass and she could retreat to the safety of distance, Instead, she found herself standing, checking that Lily was deeply asleep, and opening the door. Dominic stood by his desk, staring at something in his hands. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his features. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much has happened." She moved closer and saw what he was holding, a small portrait, painted in miniature. A girl with long dark hair and uncertain eyes, wearing a simple village dress. "Is that the only picture I have of you?" His thumb traced the frame. "I commissioned it from memory 2 years after you disappeared. The artist thought I was mad, trying to describe someone I claimed was dead. But I needed something tangible, some proof you'd been real." The pain in his voice made her chest ache. "Dominic, I kept searching, you know. Even after they found your blood, after the funeral, after everyone told me to accept it and move on. I sent people to every human settlement within 500 miles. I interrogated anyone who'd been near the border that week." He set the portrait down carefully. "I was obsessed. The council staged an intervention, told me my grief was making me unstable, that I was neglecting my duties. I'm sorry." The words were inadequate, but she didn't have better ones. "Tell me what happened." He finally looked at her, really looked at her. "Not the simple version. The whole truth. I need to understand." Isabella wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. "It was 3 weeks after we announced the engagement. Do you remember?" "I remember everything about those months. The council requested a private meeting with me. Without you." She moved to the window, needing to look at something other than his face. Lord Varon, Lady Helena, Lord Mortis, and 3 others. They were polite at first. Explained that they understood you cared for me, but that the kingdom needed stability. A proper vampire queen with the right bloodline. I told them bloodlines didn't matter. Dominic's voice was tight with anger. I made it clear. They didn't care what you said. They cared about what would happen. Isabella's reflection stared back at her from the dark window. They had reports. Intelligence from the werewolf clans who were already calling you weak for choosing a human. Letters from 3 noble houses threatening to withdraw their support. A petition signed by half the vampire families demanding the engagement be dissolved. She heard him move closer but didn't turn around. They said civil war was coming. That if I married you, the kingdom would fracture. Vampires would die. Humans in mixed settlements would be slaughtered in retaliation. They painted a picture of blood and chaos, all because you loved the wrong person. That's manipulation, Dominic said harshly. Political theater meant to frighten you. Maybe. But then Lord Mortis showed me the letter. Her voice dropped. From the werewolf pack Alpha. It was very specific, Dominic. If you married me, they'd consider it an insult to the supernatural order. They'd attack human villages under your protection as a demonstration. Women and children. People I'd grown up with. She finally turned to face him. They made me read the names. 27 children under the age of 10 who lived in border villages. They told me those deaths would be on my hands if I was selfish enough to stay. Dominic looked stricken. Isabella, threats like that, I could have protected those villages, fortified the borders. With what army? You'd just signed a peace treaty. You were trying to reduce military presence to show good faith. Starting a war to protect your human fiancé would have destroyed everything you'd worked for. She shook her head. And even if you'd won, how many would have died? How much blood for the sake of my happiness? It wasn't just your happiness. It was our bond. Our mate connection. a connection they called unnatural. The old wound bled fresh. They said true mate bonds didn't cross species. That what we felt was infatuation, obsession, but not the sacred connection vampire lore described. They had scholars, Dominic, ancient texts, all supporting their claim that I couldn't really be your mate. That's a lie. His hands clenched into fists. The mark doesn't lie. You felt it, I felt it. I was 17 and terrified and surrounded by people who'd lived for centuries telling me I was wrong about what I felt. Her voice cracked. They were so certain, so convincing. And when I still refused to leave, when I said I'd talk to you and we'd figure it out together, that's when Lord Varen made the final offer. She had to stop, had to breathe through the memory of that moment. He said if I truly loved you, I'd disappear. Cleanly. Completely. Fake my death so you'd grieve and move on instead of fighting a losing battle. And if I refused, if I was selfish enough to stay, they'd handle it themselves. Handle it? Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. An accident. They were very clear it would look natural. A fall, maybe. An animal attack. Something tragic but believable. Isabella met his eyes. But here's the thing that broke me. They said if I forced their hand, they'd make sure it happened in front of you. So you'd carry that image forever. Your mate dying while you were powerless to save her. The horror on his face told her he understood exactly how effective that threat would have been. So I agreed, she continued. Marcus, the old groundskeeper, helped me. He was human too, sympathetic. We staged it carefully. Enough of my blood to be convincing but not enough to kill me. Evidence of a struggle near the ravine. And I ran. To where? A human settlement 200 miles east. I worked as a seamstress. Found out I was pregnant 3 months later. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. That was terrifying in a completely different way. I'd never been alone before, never had to care for myself, and suddenly I was responsible for a child. My child. Our child. Dominic's voice was rough. You went through pregnancy alone. Birth alone. Raised her alone. I had help. Kind people. But yes, mostly alone. Isabella's hand drifted to her stomach, remembering. She was so small, Dominic. So perfect. And she had your eyes, and I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. This was the part she'd never admitted to anyone, barely admitted to herself. Because loving her made me realize that what we had was real. That the bond was real. And I'd let them convince me to throw it away. Tears spilled over now, hot and bitter. But it was too late. You thought I was dead. You'd moved on. Going back would just destroy the peace I'd sacrificed everything to preserve. I never moved on. Dominic closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away tears. Not for a single day. There were no other women, no attempts at replacement. How could there be? You were everywhere. In every shadow, every quiet moment. The ghost I couldn't exorcise. His touch was fire and homecoming and 8 years of longing compressed into one moment. I came back to the palace because I was weak, Isabella whispered. Because I needed to see you, even if you'd never see me. I thought I could handle it. Just being close. Just knowing you were alive and ruling and whole. Was I? Whole? No. She could admit it now. You looked empty. And that was my fault too. We were both empty. His forehead pressed against hers, and the bond sang between them. two halves pretending to be complete. For a moment, they just breathed together, feeling what it was like to be this close after so long. Then Dominic pulled back slightly, his expression shifting to something harder. The council members who threatened you. Are they still here? Most of them. Lord Mortis passed away 4 years ago. Good. That's one I don't have to deal with. His smile was sharp and cold. The others will answer for this. Dominic, revenge won't. This isn't revenge. It's justice. His eyes glittered dangerously. They stole 8 years from us. They threatened to murder you. They kept me from knowing my daughter existed. That's not politics, Isabella. That's treason. She wanted to argue, but part of her, the part that had suffered in silence for so long, wanted to let him rage, wanted to watch the people who destroyed her life face consequences. Before you keep reading, I need to ask you something. If someone made you choose between love and protecting others, what would you do? It's a question that doesn't have easy answers. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspectives matter to this family we're building here. What are you going to do? Isabella asked quietly. Dominic's expression was unreadable. Tomorrow, after the storm clears, I'm calling an emergency council session. And you're going to be there. Dominic, I can't. You can. You will. His voice gentled. I'm not asking you to face them alone. I'll be right there. But they need to see you. They need to see that their threats didn't work, that you're alive, and that they no longer have power over us. They'll fight back. They'll use every argument they used before. Let them try. Dominic's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, matching marks pressed together. 8 years ago, I was young enough to be manipulated, to let them convince me that the council's wishes mattered more than my own heart. I'm not that man anymore. What changed? I learned that ruling without purpose is just existing. And I'm tired of existing, Isabella. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I want to live. With you. With Lily. Whatever the cost. It was everything she dreamed of hearing and everything she was terrified to believe. The kingdom will adapt or fracture. Either way, I'm done sacrificing my soul for politics. He pulled her closer. I lost you once because I was too weak to fight for you. I won't make that mistake again. Isabella searched his face and saw the truth there. He meant it. Every word. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. His smile was sad and real. But I'm more scared of losing another 8 years. Another day. Another moment. The storm outside was finally starting to ease, rain softening to a steady rhythm. Inside, something else was building. Not passion, not yet. Just the slow, fragile reconstruction of trust. Stay with me tonight, Dominic said softly. Not. I just mean stay. Let me learn who you are now. Let me tell you who I've become. Let's start bridging 8 years of silence. It was a risk. Every minute with him was a risk. But Isabella had been playing it safe for 8 years, and all it had earned her was loneliness. Okay, she whispered. Yes. They sat together on the couch as the storm died, and they talked. About everything. About nothing. About the daughter sleeping in the next room and the impossible future stretching ahead of them. And for the first time in 8 years, the emptiness felt just a little less vast. Morning came softly, sunlight streaming through the windows of Dominic's study where Isabella had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. She woke to find him already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her heart ache. "How long have you been staring at me?" she murmured, her voice still rough with sleep. "Not nearly long enough to make up for 8 years. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You talk in your sleep. You never used to do that." "What did I say?" "Mostly Lily's name. A few grocery lists. Once you told someone named Margaret that the linens needed bleaching." His smile was soft. "Very riveting content." Isabella laughed, and the sound surprised her. When was the last time she'd laughed freely? "Well, clean linens are important. Clearly life or death matters." The easiness between them felt fragile and precious, like something that might shatter if they acknowledged it too directly. So they didn't. They just sat in the morning light, existing in the same space without fear or anger for the first time in years. "Mama?" They both turned. Lily stood in the bedroom doorway, her dark curls wild from sleep, looking uncertain. "Are we still in the king's rooms?" "We are," Isabella said. "The storm kept us here. But it's morning now, so we should have breakfast," Dominic interrupted smoothly. "I already sent for food. I hope you like chocolate pastries, Lily." Lily's eyes went wide. "Chocolate pastries are my favorite thing in the whole world." "Are they?" Dominic's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time since Isabella had seen him again. "They're my favorite too." "Really?" Lily moved closer, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. "Mama says I shouldn't eat too many sweets because I get bouncy." "Bouncy sounds delightful." "Your mother worries too much." "I worry the correct amount," Isabella protested, but she was smiling too. "And you're not helping by bribing her with chocolate." "I'm not bribing. I'm bonding." Dominic looked at Lily seriously. "Your mother doesn't understand that chocolate is an essential food group." Lily giggled. "That's what I always say." Watching them together, her daughter and the father she'd never known, finding common ground over pastries, Isabella felt something crack open in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the beginning of letting herself imagine this could be real. Breakfast arrived, brought by servants who looked startled to see a woman and child in the king's private quarters but were too well trained to comment. Once they were alone again, Dominic did something unexpected. He sat on the floor. "I'm told this is where the best breakfast conversations happen," he said solemnly, gesturing for Lily to join him. "At 7 years old, is that accurate?" Lily looked delighted. "Mama never sits on the floor. She says her back hurts." "I'm 33, not ancient," Isabella protested, but she lowered herself to the plush carpet anyway, accepting the plate Dominic handed her. They ate surrounded by cushions Dominic pulled from the furniture, creating an impromptu picnic in the middle of his study. Lily peppered him with questions between bites of pastry. "Do you really sleep in a coffin?" "No, that's a myth. I sleep in a bed like everyone else." "Can you turn into a bat?" "Also a myth. I'd be a terrible bat. Too tall." "Can you read minds?" "Only when people are thinking very loudly." He tapped her nose gently. "Right now you're thinking about whether you can have a second pastry." Lily's jaw dropped. "How did you know?" "Magic." He handed her another pastry with a conspiratorial wink. Isabella watched the exchange with tears threatening. This was what she'd stolen from both of them. This lightness, this easy affection. Lily had never had a father's attention, and Dominic had never known the simple joy of making his child laugh. "Your Majesty," Lily said suddenly, more serious now. "Can I ask you something important?" "Of course. And remember, you can call me Dominic." "Dominic," Lily corrected carefully. Why does Mama look sad when she looks at you? The question hung in the air. Isabella froze, not knowing how to answer. But Dominic didn't deflect. He met Lily's gray eyes, so like his own, with complete honesty. Because your mama and I used to know each other a long time ago. We cared about each other very much. But then we had to be apart, and being apart from someone you care about is very painful. Why did you have to be apart? Because sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes they let other people convince them that being together is wrong, even when their hearts say it's right. Lily processed this with the seriousness only children could bring to complex topics. But you found each other again. Doesn't that make it better? It's starting to, Dominic said softly, his eyes finding Isabella's. What do you think? Should we try to make it better? He was asking Lily, but the question was for Isabella too. Yes, Lily said firmly. Mama's been sad for too long. And you look sad too, even when you smile. So you should definitely try. Well, that's settled then. Dominic's voice was light, but his gaze on Isabella was intense. We try. Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. The morning stretched on, and somehow they found themselves looking through old photo albums Dominic kept in a drawer, pictures of the kingdom through the centuries, of people long gone. Lily was fascinated, asking about everything, and Dominic answered with patience Isabella hadn't known he possessed. Who's that? Lily pointed to a formal portrait of a severe-looking woman. My mother. Queen Anastasia. She died 200 years ago. Was she nice? Dominic paused. She was complicated. Very focused on duty and tradition. I think she would have been confused by me sitting on the floor eating chocolate pastries with a 7-year-old. That sounds sad, Lily said matter-of-factly. Not having fun, I mean. It was, sometimes. He looked at Isabella. But I had someone who taught me that duty didn't have to mean being miserable. That even kings could laugh. Isabella remembered. Long walks through gardens, stolen moments between official functions, teaching the serious young king that life could be light. You taught me too, she said quietly. That being human didn't mean being less. That I could belong somewhere, even in a world that wasn't made for me. You always belonged, Dominic said. I'm sorry anyone made you feel otherwise. The moment was broken by Lily yawning hugely. Are we going to stay here forever? Because that would be okay with me. This carpet is very soft. Dominic and Isabella exchanged glances. Reality was waiting outside these doors. The council. The confrontations. The political nightmare that would erupt when their situation became public. But right now, in this room, they were just two people who'd found each other again and the daughter who deserved to know her father. Not forever, Dominic said. But for now, yes. We're safe here. Good. Lily curled up against Isabella's side. Mama, can Dominic tell me a story? You always tell the same ones and I've heard them a million times. A million is probably an exaggeration, Isabella said, but she was smiling. What do you think, Dominic? Do vampire kings tell stories? This one does. Dominic settled back against the couch, and somehow, naturally, the three of them arranged themselves into something resembling a family. Lily between them, Isabella's hand resting near Dominic's, their fingers just barely touching. He told a story about a princess who could talk to stars and a kingdom made of moonlight. It was beautiful and fantastical, and Lily hung on every word. Isabella watched him bring the tale to life with gestures and different voices, watched their daughter's face light up with wonder, and felt something she thought was dead start to bloom again. When the story ended, Lily applauded. That was the best story ever. Better than Mama's. I don't know, Dominic said seriously. I bet your mama tells excellent stories. She always did. Will you tell me another one tomorrow? Lily asked hopefully. Tomorrow. Such a simple word. Such an enormous promise. Yes, Dominic said, and this time he took Isabella's hand fully, interlacing their fingers where Lily could see. Tomorrow and every day after, if you want. I want, Lily said. Then, with the bluntness of childhood, are you going to be my father now? The question stopped Dominic's breath. His eyes found Isabella's, asking permission for something he had every right to claim but was still too careful to assume. Isabella's throat was tight, but she managed to speak. Lily, sweetheart, Dominic is. I'd like to be, Dominic said softly, cutting her off gently. If that's all right with you. And with your mother. Being a father it's the greatest honor anyone could give me. Lily seemed to consider this. Would I call you Papa or Father or Dominic? Whatever feels right to you. I'll think about it, Lily decided. But probably Papa. That sounds nice. Papa. Dominic's composure cracked. Isabella saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes went bright with unshed tears. This immortal king who'd ruled for centuries, undone by one word from a 7-year-old girl. Papa sounds perfect, he managed. If you're watching this and you've ever experienced a moment where something broken finally started to heal, where family stopped being a dream and started becoming real, leave a comment. Share your story. This community is built on connection, on knowing we're not alone in our struggles and our hopes. They spent the rest of the morning in that peaceful bubble. Lily drew pictures while Isabella and Dominic talked quietly, filling in years of blanks. He told her about the political battles he'd fought, the loneliness of ruling, the way he'd thrown himself into kingdom work to avoid feeling anything at all. She told him about pregnancy cravings and Lily's first words and the terror of raising a child alone. They laughed. They cried. They existed together without the weight of the past crushing them. But outside the study, the palace was waking up. The storm had passed. The spring alignment ceremony would conclude tonight with the traditional council dinner. And Lord Varen had just been informed by a curious servant that the king had spent the night with a mysterious woman and child in his private quarters. The fragile peace was about to shatter. The knock on the study door came at midday, sharp and official. Dominic's expression shifted instantly from the relaxed father who'd been showing Lily card tricks to the vampire king. Enter. Lord Varen stepped inside, followed by Lady Helena and 2 other council members. Their eyes swept the room, taking in Isabella, taking in Lily, taking in the intimate scene of breakfast dishes and cushions on the floor. Your Majesty, Varen's voice was ice. We need to speak with you. Privately. No. Dominic stood, positioning himself between the council and his family. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Isabella and Lily. Isabella's blood ran cold at the use of her name. She saw the recognition flicker across Varen's face, watched his eyes narrow as he truly looked at her for the first time. Impossible, he breathed. You're dead. We saw the blood, the evidence. You saw what I wanted you to see, Isabella said, finding her voice despite the terror clawing at her throat. I'm very much alive. Lady Helena's hand flew to her mouth. This is disastrous. Your Majesty, if word gets out that your dead human mate has been living in the palace, the scandal alone. I don't care about scandal. Dominic's voice could have frozen fire. Then care about this. Varen stepped forward, his ancient face twisted with fury. That child. She has your eyes. Your features. Don't tell me you've been foolish enough to. She's my daughter. Dominic's words were a challenge. Her name is Lily, and she is the heir to this kingdom. The council members recoiled as if struck. Absolutely not, Varen spat. A half-breed abomination with no legitimate claim. Choose your next words very carefully, Dominic warned, his power filling the room until the air itself felt heavy. You're speaking about my child. Isabella pulled Lily close, her daughter's small body trembling against her. This was the nightmare. This was exactly what she'd run from 8 years ago, and now Lily was here to witness it, to be called an abomination by people who held power over their lives. Your Majesty, please. Lady Helena's tone shifted to pleading. Think about what you're doing. The noble families will never accept a human queen. The other supernatural communities will see this as weakness. Everything we've built, all the stability you've maintained, it will crumble. Let it crumble. Dominic's certainty was absolute. I'm done sacrificing my family for politics. Family? Varen laughed, cruel and cutting. This woman lied to you for 8 years. Hid your child. Lived in your house as a servant while you mourned. And you're calling that family? The words hit their target. Isabella saw doubt flicker across Dominic's face. That's different, Dominic said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. She had reasons. She had excuses, Varen interrupted. She was a coward who chose the easy path of hiding instead of standing beside you. What kind of maid abandons their bond? What kind of mother raises a child in secret, denying her heritage, her father, her rightful place? Stop it, Isabella whispered, but her voice was drowned out by the rushing in her ears. Because he was right. She had been a coward. She had taken the easy path. She'd told herself it was sacrifice, but maybe it had just been fear. And now she's back, Varen continued, circling like a predator. Conveniently appearing just when the child is old enough to be presented, just when a claim to the throne could be made. Tell me, Isabella, what do you really want? The king's heart or the king's crown? How dare you, Dominic snarled. She doesn't want. Doesn't she? Lady Helena's voice was poisonous honey. Think, Your Majesty. She's been here for months, by her own admission. Watching you. Learning your routines. And she only revealed herself when her daughter forced her hand. If the child hadn't spoken up, would you ever have known? Or would Isabella have continued her little charade, biding her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? That's not true. Isabella found her voice, desperate and raw. I came back because I needed to see him, to know he was all right. While living as a servant? Varen's eyebrow arched. How noble. How utterly selfless. Tell me, did you enjoy watching him suffer? Watching him exist as half a person while you had his child, his legacy, hidden away like a secret weapon? I was protecting them both. Tears streamed down Isabella's face now. You know what you threatened, what you promised would happen if I stayed. Ancient history. Varen waved dismissively. Political posturing meant to test your commitment. And you failed spectacularly. A true mate would have fought. Would have stood beside her king and faced the consequences together. Instead, you ran. And now you've returned with convenient proof of your connection, a child who gives you leverage, and we're supposed to believe this is love? Enough. Dominic's roar shook the windows. Get out. All of you. Now. But the damage was done. Isabella could see it in the way Dominic's eyes wouldn't quite meet hers, and the tension radiating from his body. The seeds of doubt had been planted. The council members filed out, Varen pausing at the door. We'll convene tonight. Official session. And Your Majesty, you'll need to make a choice. The kingdom where your nostalgia for a woman who abandoned you. The door closed with a definitive click. Silence crashed through the room. Lily was crying softly, her face buried in Isabella's dress. Isabella held her daughter and felt her carefully rebuilt world disintegrating. "Dominic," she started. "Is it true?" His voice was quiet, which was somehow worse than the anger. "Did you ever plan to tell me? Or were you really content to watch me from the shadows forever?" "I don't know," Isabella admitted, because she was so tired of lying. "At first, yes, I planned to stay hidden. But then every day I saw you and it hurt and I wanted to tell you, but I was terrified." "Of what?" "Of me?" He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. "Did you think I'd reject Lily? Reject you? After everything we were to each other? I thought you'd do exactly what you're doing now." The words exploded out of her. "Risk everything for us. Your throne, your kingdom, your legacy. And I couldn't let you make that choice. I couldn't be the reason everything you'd built collapsed. That's not your decision to make." His control was fraying. "You don't get to decide what I sacrifice. You don't get to choose my path and then act like you're protecting me. Someone had to protect you from yourself." Isabella stood, still clutching Lily. "You would have burned the entire kingdom down for me 8 years ago, and you're ready to do it again now. You heard them, Dominic. Nothing's changed. The same threats, the same politics. Everything's changed." He stalked toward her. "I've changed. I'm not the man who let them manipulate me before. I'm stronger now, more established." "You're alone now," Isabella countered. 8 years ago you had allies, you had goodwill, you had political capital. Now you're the king who's been half dead for years, who's alienated half the council, who's about to throw the kingdom into chaos for a woman who everyone will say manipulated him. You didn't manipulate me. Didn't I? The question was bitter. I came back, Dominic. I put myself in your path. Maybe not consciously, maybe I told myself it was just to see you, but part of me knew. Part of me always knew that eventually you'd find out. So what are you saying? His voice dropped to something dangerous. That Varen's right? That this was all calculated? That you're using Lily as leverage? No. God, no, I'm saying, Isabella's voice broke. I'm saying maybe I'm too broken to do this. Maybe loving you is always going to destroy one of us, and I can't watch it be you. Not again. So you'll run again. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. To protect you. To protect Lily. Isabella backed toward the bedroom where their bags still were. The council's right about one thing. I'm not queen material. I'm not strong enough for this world. And Lily deserves better than being called an abomination by people who'll never accept her. Lily deserves her father. Dominic's composure finally shattered completely. She deserves to know her heritage, to grow up in her rightful home. You don't get to take her away from me. Not now. Not after I've finally found her. And what kind of life will she have here? Isabella was sobbing now. Hated, rejected, always fighting for scraps of acceptance? I won't do that to her. I won't watch my daughter suffer because I was selfish enough to want her father. Selfish? You think wanting your family is selfish? Dominic looked at her like she was a stranger. 8 years ago you left because you thought it was selfless. Now you're leaving again for the same reason. Maybe Varen's right. Maybe you're just a coward who uses sacrifice as an excuse to run when things get difficult. The words hit like a physical blow. Isabella actually staggered back. "Mama, please don't fight," Lily whimpered, but neither of them could stop. "You want me to stay and watch them destroy you?" Isabella's voice was ragged. "Watch them undermine you, turn the kingdom against you, possibly kill you? Because that's what they'll do, Dominic. They got rid of me once. They'll do it again, and this time they might go through you to do it. Let them try." His eyes were wild, desperate. "I'm not losing you again. I'm not losing her. We'll fight. Together. Isn't that what mates do? We're not mates." The lie tore out of her, vicious and final. "We're two people who felt something intense and beautiful 8 years ago, and we've been mourning it ever since. But maybe that's all it was. Intensity. Obsession. Not the foundation for destroying a kingdom." She saw the moment her words killed something in him. Saw his expression close off, his eyes go cold. "Get out." His voice was empty. "If that's what you believe, then you're right. You should go. Take Lily. Disappear again. Do what you do best. Dominic." I said get out. The roar was pain and fury, and 8 years of abandonment compressed into 3 words. "Go. Run. I won't stop you this time. I won't chase you. I'm done breaking myself on your fear." Isabella gathered Lily, who was crying openly now, and moved toward the door. Every step felt like dying. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. Dominic stood in the center of his study, surrounded by the remnants of their mourning together, looking more alone than she'd ever seen him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For all of it. You deserved so much better than me." "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." The door closed between them. And in the hallway, clutching her sobbing daughter, Isabella realized she'd just made the same mistake twice. She'd run to protect him, and destroyed them both in the process. Inside the study, Dominic stood motionless, feeling the bond mark on his wrist turn cold and dark. She'd meant those words. She truly believed they weren't mates. Which meant everything he'd felt, everything he'd been so certain of, had been a lie. He'd been a fool twice over. And this time, he had no one to blame but himself. Isabella made it 3 floors down before her legs gave out. She sank onto a servant's stairwell, Lily curled in her lap, both of them shaking with tears. Around them, the palace bustled with activity, staff preparing for tonight's council dinner, nobles arriving for the ceremony's conclusion, but in this forgotten corner, they were utterly alone. "Mama, why did we leave?" Lily's voice was small and broken. "I liked it there. I liked him. I know, sweet girl. I know." Isabella rocked her daughter, her own tears falling into Lily's dark curls. "Sometimes loving someone means leaving them. That's stupid." Lily pulled back, her gray eyes, Dominic's eyes, red and accusing. "You taught me that love means staying. That family doesn't give up on each other. But you just gave up on him." The accusation from her 7-year-old hit harder than anything the council had said. "It's more complicated than that." "No, it's not." Lily's voice rose, echoing in the stairwell. "He wanted us. He said we were family. And you said we weren't even mates, but Mama, I felt it. When you were all together this morning, something felt right. Like pieces fitting together. And you broke it." Isabella had no defense. "Because Lily was right." "He called you a coward," Lily continued, ruthless in her child's honesty. "And those other people called me an abomination. But you're the one who's running away. So maybe they're both right." The words hung in the air, devastating and true. Lily, I'm trying to protect you. I don't want protection. I want a papa. Lily's voice cracked. I had one for one morning, and you took him away. Just like you took away knowing him my whole life. You made that choice for me, Mama. And it wasn't fair. Isabella stared at her daughter and saw the truth she'd been avoiding for 8 years. She hadn't just been protecting Lily. She'd been protecting herself. From the pain of fighting, from the risk of losing, from the vulnerability of standing beside Dominic and facing the world together. Varen had called her a coward. Dominic had called her a coward. And her 7-year-old daughter had just confirmed it. You're right, Isabella whispered. I've been so afraid of what might happen that I didn't fight for what should happen. And I've been doing it for so long I forgot there was another option. What option? Being brave. Isabella cupped Lily's face, seeing her own fear reflected back at her. Your papa was right. I don't get to make choices for everyone else to protect them from pain. Sometimes the brave thing is standing together and facing the pain as a family. So we go back. Hope lit Lily's tear-stained face. I don't know if he'll have us back, Isabella admitted. I said terrible things. I hurt him badly. Then you apologize. You taught me that too. Out of the mouths of babes. Isabella pulled Lily close, breathing in her daughter's courage. You're braver than I am, you know that? I know. I get it from Papa. Lily said it with such certainty, such pride in a father she'd known for mere hours, that Isabella's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Yes, Isabella agreed. You definitely get it from him. 3 floors above, Dominic stood at his study window and contemplated breaking something. The council had what they wanted. Isabella was gone. Lily was gone. He was alone again, which was apparently where he belonged. The solitary king, wedded only to duty, with nothing soft or warm or real to anchor him to anything resembling humanity. He should feel relieved. No more complications. No more political nightmares. Just the clean, simple existence of ruling without the messiness of love. Instead, he felt dead. Your Majesty? A soft knock. May I enter? No. Dominic didn't turn from the window. The door opened anyway. Of course it did. I said no, Varen. It's not Varen. The voice was elderly but warm. Margaret, the head housekeeper. One of the few palace staff who'd served long enough to remember Dominic before he'd become the Ice King. And I'm old enough that I don't follow orders when they're stupid. Despite everything, Dominic's lips twitched. That's insubordination. Fire me, then. I'm 300 years old. I could use the retirement. Margaret moved into the room, her ancient eyes taking in the scattered cushions, the breakfast dishes, the lingering warmth of family. You had them here. The girl and her mother. Yes. And you let them leave. She wanted to go. The words tasted like ash. Horseshit. Margaret's bluntness was legendary. That girl's been pining for you for 8 years. I knew who she was the moment she applied for the position. You think I don't recognize a woman wearing her heart like an open wound? Dominic spun around. You knew? This entire time, you knew Isabella was alive and in the palace? Of course I knew. I'm old, not blind. Margaret settled into a chair with a sigh. But it wasn't my secret to tell. She was hiding, trying to keep herself and the child safe from people who threatened her. What was I supposed to do? Drag her to you and let the council tear her apart? You could have told me, Dominic said quietly. Given me the choice. could I? You were barely functioning, boy. Half dead yourself, ruling on autopilot. Finding out she was alive might have broken you entirely. Or you might have done something rash and gotten you both killed. Margaret's gaze was shrewd. She was waiting, I think. Waiting for you to be strong enough to fight for her. Waiting to be brave enough to let you. She denied our bond. The confession ripped out of him. Said we weren't mates. That it was just intensity, obsession. How do I come back from that? Was she right? The question stopped him cold. What? Was she right? Margaret repeated. Is what you feel obsession? Intensity that faded over 8 years? Or is it the real thing? The kind of love that survives separation, survives pain, survives 2 idiots too scared to fight for it? Dominic thought about the 8 years. The emptiness. The way he'd felt her absence like a missing limb. The way his mark had blazed to life the moment she was close. The way this morning had felt right, whole, complete. It's real, he whispered. It's always been real. Then she was lying. Margaret's voice softened. She was scared and cornered, and she lied to push you away. To protect you, in her misguided, self-sacrificing way. The question is, are you going to let that lie stand? Or are you going to fight for your family? The council. Damn the council. Margaret's fist hit the arm of her chair. I've served this kingdom for 3 centuries. I've watched kings rise and fall. And you know what I've learned? The ones who ruled with only duty in their hearts. They kept the kingdom running. But the ones who ruled with love? They made the kingdom worth having. Dominic stared at this ancient woman who'd changed his diapers when he was a child, who'd served his family with unwavering loyalty, who was now looking at him with something like disappointment. You think I'm making a mistake, he said. I think you're making the same mistake she is. You're both so busy protecting each other that you're destroying yourselves. Margaret stood, her joints creaking. That child down there? Lily? She needs her father. Not a king. Not a title. A father who'll fight for her, who'll stand beside her mother and face whatever comes. What if I fight and lose? What if the kingdom fractures and people die? What if you don't fight and you lose them? Margaret moved to the door, then paused. You've been dead for 8 years, Your Majesty. I watched the light go out of you when she disappeared. You want to spend another 8 years like that? Another 80? Another 800? Because that's what you're choosing if you let her walk away again. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Dominic stood alone in the silence and felt the truth settle over him like a mantle. He'd been so focused on the ways Isabella had failed him, hiding, lying, running, that he'd ignored the ways he'd failed her. He'd let the council manipulate him 8 years ago. He'd been too young, too unsure of his power to stand against them. And when she disappeared, he'd mourned, but he'd also accepted it. He'd let them convince him to move on, to focus on duty, to bury his grief in governance. He'd failed to fight for her then. And he'd just done it again. When Varen had attacked her, had accused her of manipulation and cowardice, Dominic had defended her. But not enough. Not completely. He'd let doubt creep in. He'd let their poison work. And when she'd said they weren't mates, when she denied their bond, he should have seen it for what it was: fear. Terror. The desperate attempt of a woman who'd been told for 8 years that loving him would destroy everything. Instead, he'd lashed out. He'd told her to leave. He'd confirmed every fear she'd ever had about not being enough, about being the thing that would break him. He'd called her a coward while being too much of a coward himself to fight past her defenses. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd let her go. Again. But it wasn't too late. It couldn't be too late. Dominic moved with sudden purpose, striding to his desk and pulling out parchment. He wrote quickly, his handwriting bold and certain. Emergency council session. Tonight. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. He sealed it with his royal mark and called for a messenger. Deliver this to every council member. Then find Isabella Martinez and her daughter. Bring them to the council chambers at sunset. Tell Isabella it's not a request. The messenger bowed and hurried out. Dominic looked down at his wrist, at the mark that had been dark and cold since Isabella left. As he thought of her, as he committed to fighting for her, it flickered. Just slightly. A pulse of silver light. The bond wasn't broken. It was waiting. Waiting for him to be brave enough to claim it. Isabella was in the servants' quarters, packing their meager belongings, when the messenger found her. His Majesty requests your presence at the council session tonight. Her hands stilled on Lily's spare dress. Requests or demands? He said to tell you it's not a request. So, a demand. A final confrontation. Isabella's first instinct was to refuse. To take Lily and disappear before sunset. But Lily's words echoed in her mind, you taught me that love means staying. And beneath her fear, beneath the terror of facing the council again, there was something else. Something that had been growing since she'd sat on that stairwell with her daughter. Hope. Dominic had called an emergency session. He'd summoned her specifically. He wasn't letting her run. He was forcing her to stand and face this. Maybe that meant he was going to fight after all. And if he was brave enough to fight, shouldn't she be? Tell His Majesty we'll be there, Isabella said quietly. The messenger bowed and left. Lily looked up at her mother, eyes wide. Are we really going? Yes. Isabella knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. And this time, no matter what they say, no matter how scared I get, I'm not running. We're going to stand with your papa and face this together. As a family. Promise? Promise. Lily threw her arms around Isabella's neck. I'm proud of you, Mama. And Isabella, holding her brave, brilliant daughter, made a choice. Not the easy choice. Not the safe choice. The right choice. She was done running. It was time to fight. Isabella made it 3 floors down before her legs gave out. She sank onto a servant's stairwell, Lily curled in her lap, both of them shaking with tears. Around them, the palace bustled with activity, staff preparing for tonight's council dinner, nobles arriving for the ceremony's conclusion, but in this forgotten corner, they were utterly alone. Mama, why did we leave? Lily's voice was small and broken. I liked it there. I liked him. I know, sweet girl. I know. Isabella rocked her daughter, her own tears falling into Lily's dark curls. Sometimes loving someone means leaving them. That's stupid. Lily pulled back, her gray eyes, Dominic's eyes, red and accusing. You taught me that love means staying. That family doesn't give up on each other. But you just gave up on him. The accusation from her 7-year-old hit harder than anything the council had said. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. Lily's voice rose, echoing in the stairwell. He wanted us. He said we were family. And you said we weren't even mates, but Mama, I felt it. When you were all together this morning, something felt right. Like pieces fitting together. And you broke it. Isabella had no defense. Because Lily was right. He called you a coward, Lily continued, ruthless in her child's honesty. And those other people called me an abomination. But you're the one who's running away. So maybe they're both right. The words hung in the air, devastating and true. Lily, I'm trying to protect you. I don't want protection. I want a papa. Lily's voice cracked. I had one for one morning, and you took him away. Just like you took away knowing him my whole life. You made that choice for me, Mama. And it wasn't fair. Isabella stared at her daughter and saw the truth she'd been avoiding for 8 years. She hadn't just been protecting Lily. She'd been protecting herself. From the pain of fighting, from the risk of losing, from the vulnerability of standing beside Dominic and facing the world together. Varen had called her a coward. Dominic had called her a coward. And her 7-year-old daughter had just confirmed it. You're right, Isabella whispered. I've been so afraid of what might happen that I didn't fight for what should happen. And I've been doing it for so long I forgot there was another option. What option? Being brave. Isabella cupped Lily's face, seeing her own fear reflected back at her. Your papa was right. I don't get to make choices for everyone else to protect them from pain. Sometimes the brave thing is standing together and facing the pain as a family. So we go back. Hope lit Lily's tear-stained face. I don't know if he'll have us back, Isabella admitted. I said terrible things. I hurt him badly. Then you apologize. You taught me that too. Out of the mouths of babes. Isabella pulled Lily close, breathing in her daughter's courage. You're braver than I am, you know that? I know. I get it from Papa. Lily said it with such certainty, such pride in a father she'd known for mere hours, that Isabella's heart broke and healed simultaneously. Yes, Isabella agreed. You definitely get it from him. 3 floors above, Dominic stood at his study window and contemplated breaking something. The council had what they wanted. Isabella was gone. Lily was gone. He was alone again, which was apparently where he belonged. The solitary king, wedded only to duty, with nothing soft or warm or real to anchor him to anything resembling humanity. He should feel relieved. No more complications. No more political nightmares. Just the clean, simple existence of ruling without the messiness of love. Instead, he felt dead. Your Majesty? A soft knock. May I enter? No. Dominic didn't turn from the window. The door opened anyway. Of course it did. I said no, Varen. It's not Varen. The voice was elderly but warm. Margaret, the head housekeeper. One of the few palace staff who'd served long enough to remember Dominic before he'd become the Ice King. And I'm old enough that I don't follow orders when they're stupid. Despite everything, Dominic's lips twitched. That's insubordination. Fire me, then. I'm 300 years old. I could use the retirement. Margaret moved into the room, her ancient eyes taking in the scattered cushions, the breakfast dishes, the lingering warmth of family. You had them here. The girl and her mother. Yes. And you let them leave. She wanted to go. The words tasted like ash. Horseshit. Margaret's bluntness was legendary. That girl's been pining for you for 8 years. I knew who she was the moment she applied for the position. You think I don't recognize a woman wearing her heart like an open wound? Dominic spun around. You knew? This entire time, you knew Isabella was alive and in the palace? Of course I knew. I'm old, not blind. Margaret settled into a chair with a sigh. But it wasn't my secret to tell. She was hiding, trying to keep herself and the child safe from people who threatened her. What was I supposed to do? Drag her to you and let the council tear her apart? You could have told me, Dominic said quietly. Given me the choice. Could I? You were barely functioning, boy. Half dead yourself, ruling on autopilot. Finding out she was alive might have broken you entirely. Or you might have done something rash and gotten you both killed. Margaret's gaze was shrewd. She was waiting, I think. Waiting for you to be strong enough to fight for her. Waiting to be brave enough to let you. She denied our bond. The confession ripped out of him. Said we weren't mates. That it was just intensity, obsession. How do I come back from that? Was she right? The question stopped him cold. What? Was she right? Margaret repeated. Is what you feel obsession? Intensity that faded over 8 years? Or is it the real thing? The kind of love that survives separation, survives pain, survives 2 idiots too scared to fight for it? Dominic thought about the 8 years. The emptiness. The way he'd felt her absence like a missing limb. The way his mark had blazed to life the moment she was close. The way this morning had felt right, whole, complete. It's real, he whispered. It's always been real. Then she was lying. Margaret's voice softened. She was scared and cornered, and she lied to push you away. To protect you, in her misguided, self-sacrificing way. The question is, are you going to let that lie stand? Or are you going to fight for your family? The council. Damn the council. Margaret's fist hit the arm of her chair. I've served this kingdom for 3 centuries. I've watched kings rise and fall. And you know what I've learned? The ones who ruled with only duty in their hearts. They kept the kingdom running. But the ones who ruled with love? They made the kingdom worth having. Dominic stared at this ancient woman who'd changed his diapers when he was a child, who'd served his family with unwavering loyalty, who was now looking at him with something like disappointment. You think I'm making a mistake, he said. I think you're making the same mistake she is. You're both so busy protecting each other that you're destroying yourselves. Margaret stood, her joints creaking. That child down there? Lily? She needs her father. Not a king. Not a title. A father who'll fight for her, who'll stand beside her mother and face whatever comes. What if I fight and lose? What if the kingdom fractures and people die? What if you don't fight and you lose them? Margaret moved to the door, then paused. You've been dead for 8 years, Your Majesty. I watched the light go out of you when she disappeared. You want to spend another 8 years like that? Another 80? Another 800? Because that's what you're choosing if you let her walk away again. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Dominic stood alone in the silence and felt the truth settle over him like a mantle. He'd been so focused on the ways Isabella had failed him, hiding, lying, running, that he'd ignored the ways he'd failed her. He'd let the council manipulate him 8 years ago. He'd been too young, too unsure of his power to stand against them. And when she disappeared, he'd mourned, but he'd also accepted it. He'd let them convince him to move on, to focus on duty, to bury his grief in governance. He'd failed to fight for her then. And he'd just done it again. When Varen had attacked her, had accused her of manipulation and cowardice, Dominic had defended her. But not enough. Not completely. He'd let doubt creep in. He'd let their poison work. And when she'd said they weren't mates, when she denied their bond, he should have seen it for what it was: fear. Terror. The desperate attempt of a woman who'd been told for 8 years that loving him would destroy everything. Instead, he'd lashed out. He'd told her to leave. He'd confirmed every fear she'd ever had about not being enough, about being the thing that would break him. He'd called her a coward while being too much of a coward himself to fight past her defenses. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd let her go. Again. But it wasn't too late. It couldn't be too late. Dominic moved with sudden purpose, striding to his desk and pulling out parchment. He wrote quickly, his handwriting bold and certain. Emergency council session. Tonight. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. He sealed it with his royal mark and called for a messenger. Deliver this to every council member. Then find Isabella Martinez and her daughter. Bring them to the council chambers at sunset. Tell Isabella it's not a request. The messenger bowed and hurried out. Dominic looked down at his wrist, at the mark that had been dark and cold since Isabella left. As he thought of her, as he committed to fighting for her, it flickered. Just slightly. A pulse of silver light. The bond wasn't broken. It was waiting. Waiting for him to be brave enough to claim it. Isabella was in the servants' quarters, packing their meager belongings, when the messenger found her. His Majesty requests your presence at the council session tonight. Her hands stilled on Lily's spare dress. Requests or demands? He said to tell you it's not a request. So, a demand. A final confrontation. Isabella's first instinct was to refuse. To take Lily and disappear before sunset. But Lily's words echoed in her mind, you taught me that love means staying. And beneath her fear, beneath the terror of facing the council again, there was something else. Something that had been growing since she'd sat on that stairwell with her daughter. Hope. Dominic had called an emergency session. He'd summoned her specifically. He wasn't letting her run. He was forcing her to stand and face this. Maybe that meant he was going to fight after all. And if he was brave enough to fight, shouldn't she be? Tell His Majesty we'll be there, Isabella said quietly. The messenger bowed and left. Lily looked up at her mother, eyes wide. Are we really going? Yes. Isabella knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. And this time, no matter what they say, no matter how scared I get, I'm not running. We're going to stand with your papa and face this together. As a family. Promise? Promise. Lily threw her arms around Isabella's neck. I'm proud of you, Mama. And Isabella, holding her brave, brilliant daughter, made a choice. Not the easy choice. Not the safe choice. The right choice. She was done running. It was time to fight.